We are recording. I will say for the other parties, we have begun the complaint committee hearing. It is now 5:35. Chair Schmidt, would you like to introduce the hearing, or would you want me to?
Ms. Leger, I'm going to defer to you, please.
Okay. This is the complaint committee meeting of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. It is a remote regular meeting. Listen and public call-in numbers 415-906-4659, meeting ID 958-563-986#. If you wish to make a statement during general public comment, please press *6 and unmute your telephone to speak. Please press *6 to mute your telephone once you are done with your statement. Please also note that callers may now raise their hands by pressing *5. The date today is January 18, 2022. Remote access to information and participation. In accordance with Governor Newsom's Executive Order N3320, declaring a state of emergency regarding the COVID-19 outbreak, and Mayor London and Breed's proclamation declaring a local emergency issued on February 25, 2020, including the guidance for gatherings issued by the San Francisco Department of Public Health officer, aggressive directives were issued to reduce the spread of COVID-19. On March 17, 2020, the Board of Supervisors authorized their board and committee meetings to convene remotely via Microsoft Teams and will allow remote public comment via teleconference. Members of the public may participate by phone or may submit their comments by email to cheryl.leger@sfgov.org. That's CHERYL.LEGER@sfgov.org. All comments received will be made a part of the official record. Sunshine Ordinance Task Force agendas and their associated documents are available at sfbos.org/sunshine. As the COVID-19 disease progresses, please visit the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force website regularly to be updated on the current situation as it affects the legislative process. Chair Schmidt, do you want to read meeting decorum?
Yes. Any member of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force may call for decorum due to disorderly conduct of meeting participants. Persons who engage in threatening and or menacing behavior may be asked to leave.
Okay. Shall I read item number 1?
Yes, please.
Item number 1, call to order, roll call, and agenda changes. Call to order was at 5:35. We'll do roll. Member Stein?
Here.
Oh,
I'm
Member Stein present. Chair Schmidt?
Woo! Okay, present.
Chair Schmidt present. We have a quorum. Are either of you aware of any agenda changes? Has anybody contacted you? I've not gotten anything about agenda changes, so.
Nothing.
No.
All right. Shall we move on to item number 2?
No. What about public comment, please?
Well, it is an item,
Yeah,
Cheryl.
If it's on the agenda, people have a right to make public comment.
Yeah, let's, it sounds like we do have a public commenter on number 1. So when you're ready, Cheryl, let's go ahead with that.
I'm Patrick.
Do we have other public commenters? Okay, I guess we just have the one commenter. Sir, are you ready to begin?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
I'm Patrick. Given potential changes to the SOTF procedures you're going to discuss in agenda item 8, you should change today's agenda and remove agenda item 5 as a complete waste of your time. By the complainant's own admission, the public library did respond to a timely manner to the complainant on the same day he placed his public records request on January 7th, 2021. So there is no timeliness violation under 67.21b. The complainant asserts the library's response did not include a statutory citation in declining to produce confidential records protected by privacy provisions in CIPRA. The complainant claims no citation was provided, but it is essentially moot under CIPRA. So this committee should remove agenda item 5. On January 11th, the public library, as the respondent, asked the task force to dismiss this complaint because California Government Code 6254.3b clearly states personal email addresses of employees of a public agency shall not be deemed to be public records. Government Code 6254.3c clearly states public agencies shall not disclose employees' personal email address. Even if the respondent didn't provide the complainant with a citation on January 7th, 2021, CIPRA is clearly on the public library's side that it is prohibited from releasing private email addresses as an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. The complainant has no valid claim here, so the complaint should be found to be moot. This committee should dismiss and remove the complaint at agenda item 5 by tabling the matter and closing the file, as you have done on other sunshine complaints. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that may be all the public comment on item number 1. Oh, we have another public comment.
Please. Can you hear me?
On item number 1, yes.
I'm not clear the difference between muting and public.
Ready.
Pardon?
When Cheryl's ready, please.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm not
Mr.
clear what the difference is between *5 and *6.
Mr. Warfield, will you read it again?
When does my time start?
Well, when you start, tell me that you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
There you go.
This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and we can be also reached at P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. I wasn't clear that there was going to be legal arguments being made about specific complaints at the item called roll call. So I think that that's, well, I certainly disagree. And there is a lot of assumptions being made and a lot of interpretations of the law that the previous speaker made, which I don't think are appropriate. I think it's appropriate to take up the complaint, especially as the, well, let's just say that whether something is turned over to a person who requests information, I think is quintessentially your job to determine. And I'm prepared certainly to follow up and explain when the item comes up.
Thank you.
And with respect to roll call, I just wanted to say that I thought there were 3 people on the committee. I'm not clear. There seem to be now 2 listed, and I'm curious whether we're missing somebody or what's going on. There used to be, I think, 2. There used to be 3 members. So I'm wondering what happened. Is the committee now just 2 members or what? Thank you.
All right. I'm going to just clarify that we did lose a member who was on this committee. Um, geez, Member Stein, I'm sorry.
She moved. Dean, she
Yeah,
moved. She's no longer living in San Francisco, so she cannot
That's right.
participate in the task force.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I'm sorry. The name is escaping me. I don't know why.
Peggy Forsley.
Yeah.
Right,
Member
right,
Forsley.
yeah, Member Forsley. Yes. And there's not going to be any changes to the agenda. And we'll hear number 5. This is a committee hearing, and so as the rules are currently constituted, there would not really be an ability to simply delete a case. And so that case will be heard in order. Okay. Am I seeing a hand up, Cheryl?
I see a hand up.
Yeah, and so I don't know how to handle that, but it does show up on my screen.
Victor? All right, well, I'm going to try to.
Sorry, was there a question?
There's a hand up. Somebody has a comment.
A hand with,
We are not using that as with Microsoft Teams. So if you want to acknowledge him, you may.
Yeah, and that is possibly Anonymous 3, or it could be another anonymous person. I don't know. We should see if Anonymous is seeking to make public comment at this time.
Victor, what do I do? Click on that person's telephone number?
You can right click on that, and there'll be options on the right hand side with 3 dots. And if it's a problem with muting, you can unmute him.
In for me, spotlight for everyone. I'll lower the hand. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we've had public comment. There are no agenda changes. Shall we on to item number 2?
Yes, please.
Item number 2, approval of the December 2021 Complaint Committee meeting minutes. I have a copy of the minutes. Get up.
I have no changes. Member Stein.
Hold on a second. Was Member Yankee not at that meeting and voting?
That certainly sounds plausible. Member Yankee
he literally, I'm pretty sure he was at that meeting, and he's mentioned sometimes in the discussion, but he's not listed as being present or as voting on any of the items, but I believe that he did, and that that we actually had 3 people approving everything.
Okay.
So that was
Great
one. Yeah, and then there was another one, which was item number 6. I think it should say whether anything in the Sunshine Ordinance overrides CPRA 6254.26 A6 is what we were referring to when we were suggesting what the full task force should look at. And I think that just got lost as just CPRA, but it was a particular citation from CPRA, Cheryl.
6254.26.
6254.26 A as an apple and 6. And with those changes, I'm ready to approve the minutes. So every vote, we also had our 3rd member there who voted in favor. I don't think there were any split votes.
I will check my voting records.
Okay.
I will. Thank you for pointing that out.
Sure.
Okay, with those changes, whenever you're ready, Ms. Lejay, we can see if the public commenters, there may be other items that they would find, and we'll certainly consider those.
We consider public comment.
Let's do it during public comment.
Yeah. So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minute.
Second.
Public comment, please.
Just a moment, Mr. Shaw. Do we have other public commenters?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Sullivan.
One, two, three. Sullivan is 3.
All right, Mr. Monette Shaw, you ready to begin?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Regarding item 11 on today's agenda, it's good to see that item 8, I'm sorry, on the item 11 on the December 21 agenda, it's good to see that on today's agenda, item 8 now includes background documentation for you to use writing a formal draft to the procedures and bylaws. I support Chair Smith's suggestions that complaints could be reviewed by committee members, task force members, or perhaps SOTF administrative staff before scheduling any complaint for a hearing of any kind. A case in point is complaint number 21-165 at agenda item 5 on today's calendar. While there might be a somewhat minor sunshine ordinance violation, that the public library as respondent did not provide the complainant with a valid citation, your complaint procedures should allow you to review the background facts and take action to not forward to the full task force a complaint such as the one at number 5. The SOTS administrative staff should be allowed to notify respondent departments of any minor violations that involve such things as failing to include a valid citation when they otherwise had correctly complied with provisions in the ordinance or complied with provisions in CIPRA. I urge you to take up anonymous number 3's suggestion that a consent calendar procedure be created so that cases such as number 5 on today's agenda could be tabled and dismissed without a hearing. This case does not deserve a hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. When you're ready, Cheryl, next public commenter. And this is on the minutes, number 2.
Mr. Warfield, are you ready?
Yes, we're commenting on the minutes of December, the draft minutes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let me
Go
go
ahead.
and start.
Go ahead, Mr. Warfield.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and also P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117 0544. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, we have taken recently, relatively speaking, to giving our the way in which a person might reach us with every time we speak. And that's because in general, in a public meeting, one of the things that happens in a public meeting is that people can see each other speaking. They can approach each other if they wish at the meeting and make contact and see about getting in touch, see about discussing things. That's not possible in a remote meeting. So in an attempt, as you have done, to have a remote meeting, in our attempt to make that as real as possible and as similar to a real meeting as possible, an in-person meeting, that's why we give information about where we can be reached. And I would appreciate if you would include that information as part of our name, including the details that I provide with Library Users Association. With respect to, I think I'm hearing noises, and I think that that shouldn't be really appropriate. With respect to some of the comments here, I think that they're highly limited and even misleading. I don't really understand my own comments as represented presumably by the summaries on item for example, number 5 on the minutes. It says that I express disagreement with the motion, objects to the SOTF having a secret.
30 seconds.
And that Dr. Sumchai should consult an attorney. I don't recall saying that at all, and I certainly don't know what kind of a secret. I think I would have been much clearer and more specific. And likewise, the other comments I think need a greater specificity, as very often I think would be appropriate for the meeting minutes in general, but I have no time right now to give more details, but I would appreciate having the identification given as I give it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Next commenter, Mrs. A.
Mr. Sullivan, are you ready?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
I did a word search for Yankee on this minutes PDF, and nothing came up. So his name isn't anywhere in the minutes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so that is the conclusion of public comment on the item. Member Stein, do you believe that there's anything else that we should consider before voting on approval?
I guess just check that member Yankee was there. That is my memory, and I thought that I saw something. When I do a search, it's not coming up either, but when I read the minutes, I thought I saw his name there. And that was, yeah, I mean, just, I guess double check that, Cheryl, but that was my memory and reading.
Yeah,
I know that when you search these files, that doesn't always show.
Yeah, Cheryl, can you confirm that that was the meeting that member Yankee came in and was the third? And if so, amend accordingly?
Yeah.
I think that's part of our initial motion.
All right.
Yes, moved by member Stein, second by member Schiff to approve the minutes as amended.
Okay, yeah, but that's, I'm saying, let's just check that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, I said I would.
I know, sorry, just making sure.
Shall we do item 3?
Do we want to vote on that, Cheryl?
Yeah, you're right. Member Stein?
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Chair Schmidt?
Aye.
Chair Schmidt, aye. Moved by Member Stein, seconded by Member Schmidt to approve the December 2021 minutes as amended.
Number 3.
Hang Item number 3, public comment. Members of the public may address the committee on matters that are within the committee's jurisdiction but not on today's agenda.
I would like to comment, please.
We have one. Anyone else for general public comment? Sullivan's 2.
Somebody type.
Sorry,
What?
that's me. I'm gonna.
Can you mute yourself when you do that? Thank you. All right, this is general public comment. First speaker, Patrick Lynette Shaw.
Yes.
Are you ready, sir?
Yes, Ms. Leger, thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
I'll make this brief. First, in order to write and submit testimony to the Board of Supervisors Budget Committee to support, in support of SOTF Chair Wolf's mid-year budget supplemental funding request for additional SOTF staff, could you please request that the 2 SOTF members who had volunteered to help write proposed language to submit to the budget committee, that they provide their suggested talking points as rapidly as possible? I'd like to submit testimony to the budget committee supporting this supplemental funding request. And second, I still have not received the order of determination on my complaint number 21054. Can this committee please track down the status of my OD and let me know how soon I will receive it? Thank you. And sorry to be a nag on this issue.
All right, thank you. I think Sullivan is number 2. When you're ready, Cheryl.
Yep. Mr. Sullivan, are you ready?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
When complaints are put forward, they are more than just about obtaining records and access to public meetings. They are further about the public's right to know and holding government officials accountable. This is in your jurisdiction. There are many clauses in the public access laws that state this. Section 67(1)(e). Public officials who attempt to conduct the public's business in secret should be held accountable for their actions. Only a strong open government and sunshine ordinance enforced by a strong sunshine ordinance task force can protect the public's interest in open government. If you think what you are doing as solely about records and meetings, you are not realizing the task force's full purpose. I have heard Mr. Manat Shah complain about waiting for his order of determination so that he can make another request and get records. I have heard of others waiting for ODs for actions by other people and government officials. The OD really has little external weight outside the motion and action in it. The task force spends time correcting the minutes and approving them, none of which is done for ODs. What really has weight is the voted action. Section 67.21(e). Upon the determination that the record is public, the Sunshine Task Force shall immediately order. The task force determination action is an immediate order. There is no waiting. This has all the validity and weight unto itself. The OD is more an internal document that is not corrected or voted on to be passed on to another municipal office with enforcement powers. a shall for every task force conclusion that a person has violated any provision of access law. Other examples are meetings held without a quorum, action taken, or meeting definition coming up in the Winship communication. These are in the Brown Act, and willful is the Sunshine and Chapman. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. I will say that some of this may come up in our discussion of the last item today. Certainly, in looking back, I had the one item I thought I may not have addressed as much as I had intended was the status and situation with orders of determination. But I will leave that, and I'm just saying this because both of the public commenters mentioned orders, and I think it is a significant issue, but I'm going to defer to talk about that. Okay, anyone else here for public comment? I think it's concluded.
Yes, please.
Oh, we have a third. When Cheryl's ready, we have a third public commenter.
All right, Mr. Warfield, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Let me know when to start.
Let's go ahead.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and PO Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. With respect to process for changing Sunshine processes, it seems to me difficult to follow the details as to when, what is being changed, how it is being changed, why it's being changed. And I think those things should be discussed fully and completely and in detail, in particular when there's an action proposed, and that it should specify what the action specifically is doing as well as hoping to accomplish. One of the things that concerns me, I have talked a number of times this past year about the Sunshine Ordinance's duty under 67.30 and following to basically advise a whole range of folks and to turn out reports on subjects pretty much whatever it likes. And I think that there's a serious issue with respect to how testimony is obtained, and that is when you have a so-called authorized person, often that person knows nothing, certainly not firsthand often, about what the situation is. And I think that it's really important for you to get direct testimony. I'm sure that Chair Schmidt understands the importance of direct testimony rather than hearsay or being told somehow, somewhere. Am I getting a 30-second warning or what? I'm hearing an echo or something.
No, you got a minute left.
Thank you. So I think that it's important. Now, the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force can't command that the person who rejected, for example, a records request appear. But I think what it could do is say, we need to get to the bottom of what's going on, especially, by the way, since there's currently a rash, an epidemic, really, of violations. And we would like to hear from the person who actually did the rejecting. I think the Sunshine Task Force could say, we'll discount according to our judgment if we don't get that person. Because sometimes we know or suspect that there are policies and practices that are not the formal response to a complaint, but that may, for example, be a general practice or a general order to not respond or not respond in some way, and so on and so forth. To get to the bottom of things, I think the task force needs to be sure that it has a chance to understand, genuinely understand, what is happening with respect to violations or potential violations. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
We have
oh, yeah, go ahead. Anyone else?
Does anybody else want to make a public comment? This is general public comment. No other public Chair Schmidt, we should close general public comment.
Yes, and we can move on to number 4.
Item number 4, file number 20124, complaint filed by Stephen Bajanski against Kevin Guy and the Office of Short-Term Rentals for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 6724 for failing to provide public information, 6725 for failing to respond to an immediate disclosure request in a timely manner, 6726 for failing to keep withholding to a minimum, 6727 for failing to justify withholding, and 6729 by failing to provide an index of records.
Okay, so this is the first of 4 specific cases we have here today. I intend to be as efficient as possible within the existing rules in working through these cases. We initially had 6 on the agenda, but as we've seen recently, we tend to get 1, 2, or 3 will drop during the process, and so we're left with 4 this time. On this case, I will ask if the parties are present. First, is Mr. Bajanski here?
Press *6 to unmute yourself.
Mr. Bajanski. Okay.
I believe it's *6 to unmute and mute, and 5 to raise your hand according to the instructions.
Thank you.
We got it under control.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we may not have Mr. Bajanski today. It looks like this case already once came up. Yeah.
Chair Schmidt, the case did come up. The petitioner was not present. I notified him within 48 hours that his case did come up during the hearing. He notified me the next day that he did want his case to go forward. I had been exchanging emails with him.
Got it. That's okay. So let's do what we did that time, and I'll put him back in the same status and see if he really wants to go forward.
So what we want to do is table the matter and close the file, and I will once again notify the petitioner that their case had been scheduled for hearing today, and give them a 60-day deadline in which to let me know whether they want to keep their complaint open or close.
Okay, great. And if this does come back up, I'm guessing that the last time it came up, the other committee was prepared when Mr. Bajanski didn't show up. So they've already read through the file. It's not a lengthy file. Then we've already read through the file. So if it does come up, it ought to go to one of the 2 committees that's already, spent a little time looking at the file.
Okay.
Okay.
So who would like to move to close the file?
I'll move. Close the file.
So second by Laura.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Do we want to take public comment on this?
Yes. Just on the decision, please.
On the motion.
Yeah, let's, at some point, I don't want to do this, but I probably could try to limit people, because there is a certain set of guidelines on public comment, and we don't want to go far afield. We want to stay with each item as it comes up. Okay, but just with that said, let's go ahead and see if there's any public commenters on the Bajanski item.
I'm Patrick. I'd like to comment.
We have one.
Do we have other public commenters?
Let's go ahead with Mr. Minette-Shaw.
Patrick, are you ready again?
Give me a second. I have something stuck in my throat. Wait a second.
Okay. Take your time.
Sorry to gross everyone out. I think I'm ready.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Just off the tip of my tongue, because I haven't prepared remarks for this, let me just say that this is a continuing problem with various committees and the full task force, that items are scheduled on the agenda. There's no attempt to change the meeting agenda during agenda changes with the roll call. And I would hope that as you proceed to develop new task force procedures later on in this meeting, that you consider a method by which the administrator can confirm prior to the start of the meeting if a complainant or a respondent is not going to show up, such that the item will not be even agendized, and prevent other cases from advancing to a hearing because a complainant or a respondent is going to end up being a no-show, screwing up your agenda. You guys should really, really try to figure this out, that if 3 hours before a scheduled hearing, if there's going to be no-shows, and you're going to table a particular complaint, that the 3 hour advance notice should be taken up during agenda changes and deal with it during agenda changes. You catch my drift, right? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Public comment?
We have number 2 on this. Public commenter, when you're ready, Ms. Lejay.
Mr. Warfield, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
I know when to start.
Go ahead.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and also P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. It sounded like you were going to close the case for a lack of appearance by the complainant. I would only ask, I no longer know what the rule is for a no-show, but I do know that there's always the possibility of some kind of a problem. Excuse me. And I think that you should give the maximum opportunity for the complainant. In particular, we have seen where, for example, in the case of Mr. Chafee this April, the notice of the meeting didn't even get sent out until very, very late, and certainly later than the opportunity to put material in the agenda. In my case, this time, I'm very glad that our complaint was so quickly scheduled. Excuse me, but I was concerned that I only learned of the scheduling from an email that was sent 1 day and 4 hours prior to the deadline for submitting material to the agenda. And I can imagine that that might discourage somebody who perhaps isn't prepared or didn't expect or didn't go to their email that fast. There might have been other problems. Maybe they didn't get whatever notification they were sent, or maybe they weren't sent it. In any case, I think you should give the maximum generous opportunity for somebody. I'm not clear what the specific requirements of your procedures are, but I think you should allow for the possibility. I also think it's a little bit one-sided. If the respondent doesn't show up, typically my recollection is that the task force would postpone the hearing so that they might appear at a subsequent hearing. You don't throw out the case, or in a comparable example of the complainant not showing and closing the case would be to say that the respondent has lost the case because they didn't show up. And I don't think that that's something that you would normally do, including without a hearing. If they didn't show up, there have been times where you've gone ahead with the hearing without the respondent.
20 seconds.
So that's my thought, and that is to give the maximum opportunity for the respondent to explain or to perhaps have the facts checked about what happened, and to give the complainant an opportunity to not just simply have the case closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I think we're ready for a vote.
Do we have other public commenters before we do the vote? Okay, public comment is closed. Ready for roll call?
Yes.
Chair Schmidt?
Aye.
Chair Schmidt, aye. Member Stein?
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Moved by Chair Schmidt, seconded by Member Stein to table the matter and close the file.
Next item.
Item number 5, file number 21165. Complaint filed by Peter Warfield, Library Users Association, against the City Librarian Michael Lambert, Public Library, for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 6721 by failing to respond to a public records request in a timely and or complete manner.
All right. Mr. Warfield, I believe, is present. And let's see if someone's here for the library.
Yeah, hi, this is Margot Schaub at the library.
Great. Okay, we have both parties present. Let's start with 3 minutes to give a verbal presentation about your case, starting with the complainant.
May I ask, I thought there was 5 minutes for presentation. Am I wrong?
Yeah, Chair Schmidt, it's 5 minutes for presentation.
And then 3 minutes for rebuttals?
Yes.
Well, this is a committee, so we don't have a lot of this is not really written down in the rules. If
Victor, do you have an opinion on this? Victor?
Or Member Stein, didn't we? It seems like we've worked with different levels here, and it's my sense that 3 minutes is quite enough. But
at the committee level, it's at the discretion. At the committee level, it's at the discretion of the chair, as it's not a hearing on the complaint. It's just a review to be sure that all items are present.
Yeah.
So it's at the chair's discretion to make that determination.
Okay.
No, it's not. Chair Wolf has previously commented that this is not at the discretion of a chair. It's a one-size-fits-all for every hearing until such time as you change the written procedures. You can't do this.
I'm going to thank you. Member Stein, any thoughts on this? I only ask because it seems like we may be on a sort of on a wheel that's going to keep spinning back to us on this issue.
Yeah. So I haven't looked at the bylaws lately. I mean, I would tend to believe what Victor says, or I mean, I would tend to privilege what Victor says. My understanding was that it was up to the discretion of the committee chair. I think most of our rules are task force hearing rules, but
That's not what Chair Wolf has said in the recent past.
Thank you. Yeah, you continue, Member Stein.
Oh, I mean, I don't have anything to add. I'm kind of flipping through the bylaws right now to try to see if the committees are addressed.
Yeah. I will open this for a very specific reason. If anyone can point to a written rule that has a number in it, such as 5 minutes, 3 minutes rebuttal, you may speak and point it out for me, because I do not believe that there are any written rules. And because there are not written rules, I believe that Victor Young's notation that this is discretionary is truly the rule that we follow here today.
I intend to make a complaint to Chair Wolf.
Thank you. Please do. I certainly have no. Yeah, please bring it up.
I have something to say, please. If
okay, I'll hear from you, Mr. Warfield, but I'm leaning toward allowing a 3-minute discussion of the case from you here, because this is a committee hearing. But go ahead, tell me, Mr. Warfield, briefly, please.
Well, in general, I have to agree with the previous speaker. Let me say that item 5A is determination of jurisdiction. Item B specifically uses the word hearing. And in general, I think that the rules for hearing have been defined in the complaint procedure. I'm not sure if there are other places, and like I said, I have not been assiduously keeping up with the twists and turns of changes to procedures, but this is something I referenced in my public comment. I think that it needs to be written down, and if it's written down, it needs to be followed. I'm okay with whatever you decide. I just want to understand the lay of the land. So if I'm depending, for example, on a rebuttal opportunity, which I think is very important, especially when you're considering the contents of the complaint, I think it's very important certainly for the participants to understand what they can say and when during your process at any point like today.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
So Member Schmidt,
Yes.
I see in the task force bylaws in section 10, which is hearing procedures for complaints, it says the complaint committee and the full task force hearing complaints shall follow these procedures. Complainant presents his or her facts and evidence, 5 minutes. Other parties of the complainant present facts and evidence up to 3 minutes each. City responds, 5 minutes. Other parties can respond 3 minutes. So it does seem to be written into section 10 that
Rebuttal?
Mr. Warfield, please wait and let her finish.
section 10 of the of meetings and how meetings are to be conducted, which is Article 4. So Article 4, Section 10 in the bylaws.
Okay,
Thank
so
you,
bylaws,
Member Stein.
You're reading, Member Stein, is that we would allow in this committee the same process with openings, 5-minute openings and rebuttals that is scripted for the task force. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
because it just says meetings, and then it doesn't distinguish in section 10. It specifically says complaints committee and full task force. So it seems to be applying to both.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, I believe when I read it, I thought those specific guidelines would not apply to a committee hearing, but I have no problem today with going with that process. However, as people may already know from what will come up at the last item today, I believe that it's necessary that we think about what we really need to be doing here and spending time on, since this committee does not at this time make any real determination. And so I just feel that the amount of time that we spend in these committee hearings needs to be controlled. But with that speech concluded, we will start when Cheryl's ready. 5 minutes for the complainant.
And we're going to have rebuttals as well, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Warfield, are you ready?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, which has brought this complaint. And it's fairly straightforward. It's just a couple of pages. We sent one-page complaint on December 31st, and thank you very much for the prompt scheduling. Pretty straightforward. We requested information, and we were flatly denied by the city librarian, Michael Lambert. Here's our complaint subject heading complaint and request for hearing. City librarian refused to provide requested library commissioners' email addresses. Dear Sunshine Ordinance Task Force and Sunshine Administration, this is a complaint and request for hearing based on the refusal of City Librarian Michael Lambert on January 7, 2020 to provide any contact information for Library Commission members, specifically email contact information for emails used to transact official business. This was in response to our Library Users Association request for contact information for San Francisco Public Library Commissioners, specifically email addresses used to transact official commission business. The date of the request and response were both January 7, 2020. We attach a copy of Mr. Lambert's response. We note that there was no additional information provided here, such as statutory citations or redacted mailing lists showing specific section or sections of law that justify redaction/refusal. We also provide a copy of the text below our signature block and so on in case you have trouble opening the letter of the attached response. So the response of City Librarian Michael Lambert is pretty straightforward. It came basically on letterhead. It's on page P, as in Peter 52, headed Returning Your Call. Dear Mr. Warfield, thank you for reaching out. I'm sorry I missed your call. And then he talks about the agenda for the January meeting, says it's still under development, and Margot, that's Margot Schaub, the commission analyst. Margot and I will be meeting with our Library Commission president next week to finalize. And so on. And he talks about when it's happening, when the January meeting is happening. Next paragraph, in response to your request for the Library Commissioners' email addresses, we rely on communicating with them via their personal email addresses, which we do not give out to protect their privacy. Should you like to email a library commissioner, please feel free to send the email to our Library Commission Affairs Analyst, Margot Schaub, and she will forward the communication. As you know, this is consistent with past practice. Best regards, Michael Lambert, City Librarian. So that's basically it. It was a flat refusal. There was no citation of anything specific in any statute. And I would say that we didn't provide the specific statutes that we think may have been violated. In a follow-up note for this agenda, we said that we basically stand on what we have said before, but we also think that other sections, we weren't consulted with the agenda item statement, and that there are other sections of Sunshine and of the Public Records Act that we think may have been violated, and we would like those to be considered as well. Is somebody saying something, or am I getting... how much time do I have left, please?
54 seconds.
54 seconds, did you say?
Yes. Well,
Thank you. The key on our follow-up on page 54, with respect to the substance of our complaint, we stand by the original complaint that we provided December 31st, 2021. The library flatly rejected our request for email addresses of library commissioners, as shown in the response letter from City Librarian Michael Lambert. And then with request to what was provided, we're concerned that the summary that you may have gotten introducing the complaint is not fully accurate and in fact may be misleading. We hope to listen to our complaint and the response that we got. And we've also mentioned that we believe there are more violations of law than what's indicated in the agenda wording.
your time is up, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right. At this time, we will hear from the respondents, and you are allowed up to the maximum of 5 minutes. You do not have to take all 5 minutes if you don't wish to. It is available to you.
You have to take comment in support of the complainant to provide additional facts and evidence. You did not do that, Chair Smith.
You're right. Is there anyone here who wishes to give information related to the complainant's case? Okay. Yes, I stand corrected. I was wrong to not announce for that. Thank you. And
thank you, Chair Schmidt.
I will then move on to the respondent side. And when Cheryl's ready, we can hear from Ms. Shaw.
Ms. Shaw, are you ready to begin?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Margot Shaw with the San Francisco Public Library. I'm going to reiterate what we sent in our letter, was that Michael Lambert responded on time in a timely manner to Peter Warfield's request about commissioners' emails. That was a specific ask from Mr. Warfield for commissioners' emails. And for the library commissioner email addresses, we communicate with commissioners with their personal email addresses, which are protected by privacy interests under sections 6254 C and K of the Government Code and Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution. We've also informed Mr. Warfield when he wants to communicate with commissioners that he can send me an email and I will forward that to him, which we have done on a number of occasions. And when the city librarian responded to Mr. Warfield, he did say that because we were protecting their privacy, we were not able to give out their personal email addresses. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on behalf of the respondent's case?
This is Patrick.
You want, okay, do you have information about the case, or do you wish to make public comment about the matter?
I have information.
Okay, when Cheryl's ready.
Are you ready, Patrick?
I am.
Go ahead.
Mr. Lambert clearly told the complainant over a year ago that there is a reasonable alternative remedy at his disposal to utilize. Since I have long known CIPRIT protects the privacy of commission members' private email addresses, I have consistently asked other commission secretaries and administrators of 5 separate board and commissions, including the Police Commission, the Health Commission, the Mayor's Long-Term Care Coordinating Council, which is a passive meeting body, not a policy body, the Citizens General Obligation Bond Oversight Committee, and even Sunshine Ordinance Task Force Administrator Cheryl Leger to forward my emails to those various commission members. All 5 have done so, and they've never given me any runaround about complying with my request to do so. The complainant in this case is obviously not entitled to be provided private email addresses protected under CIPRA that 40 million other Californians are not entitled to get or entitled to obtain. This complainant is not more entitled to email addresses or email records than those other 40 million Californians. End of case.
Thank you. All right, so I think at this point we can have any questions of the parties by the members. Member Stein, do you have any questions in this case?
Sorry, Member Stein. I really only have, I think, one concern here. I mean, I am pretty convinced that people's private email addresses are exempt here. But the Good Government Guide, in addition to saying that there's no right to have people's private contact information, also says on page 108 that departments should make available a city email address at which each member of the public may contact city officials, including commissioners. And I raise that because that was also my understanding coming onto this committee, that if you didn't want your personal email to be revealed, that you needed to sort of develop an email just for this kind of government communication. So it seems to me like under the Good Government Guide, there's the intention that people be able to contact commissioners directly if they want at some kind of contact information, but that you can't compel the release of the personal email. So and then it also says in California Government Code 6254.3a that personal contact information of employees is not a public record unless it's used by employees to conduct public business. And it would seem like having interchange that's in the context of your role as a commissioner with a city agency is public business, right? So what I don't understand here, and I guess this is my question for the respondent, is why do they not have an email address that can be made available to the public to contact them, as the Good Government Guide says on page 108?
This is Margot Schaub again. What I can say is that we do communicate with them through their personal email, so we cannot release them in regards to this complaint.
Is there a reason that you do not have them
I can't
email?
answer that. It's just the policy, but what I can tell you is that especially in the case of Mr. Warfield, we have made it very clear if he would like to communicate with commissioners, he can send to me throughout the past year when he's asked for certain commissioners' emails. So I think either I can talk about this case directly, or I can talk about kind of how we communicate with Mr. Warfield and what we have given to him in total. But I think we're trying to stick to this exact case, which he's asking for emails of the commissioners. We communicate with them with their personal emails, and we do not release those because of privacy concerns.
Yeah, I understand all that. It just doesn't seem to follow the policy in the Good Government Guide to not be able to allow the public to contact commissioners through some kind of email address. But anyway, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's a good point. I'm not sure what the basis is for the idea of creating that email address. I mean, it seems like it's a good idea. I just don't know if it's something that can be imposed, let's say. I do have one question for the complainant, which is, do you have any information that any of the commissioners whose email addresses you requested conduct any substantial amount of information by using the personal email addresses that you're being denied?
Well, this is Peter Warfield, Library Users Association. I think it's clear from the city librarian's letter that they do all of their library business via so-called personal emails. But what I have to say is I don't believe that there is a term or a definition of personal emails in the law. I think that there are specific exemptions. For example, in the Public Records Act, there are specific exemptions for what can be withheld. But email addresses of how folks are doing the city's business or a government body's business are not included, whereas emails are included in other portions as to what specifically may be excluded. So the idea that they can basically hide everything that they are doing or hide themselves behind a cloak of now requiring a secondary person to presumably do anything, there's nothing in the law that the law talks about unnecessary delay. It's certainly there have been unnecessary delays. When I've requested the email addresses, there were urgent matters that I wanted commissioners to know about promptly, including issues that had to do with timing for their agenda packet. And as in one case, Margot Shaw forwarded something to them, which I sent before the end of business on a Friday, which was the deadline for their preparation of the agenda. And she sent it to them on Saturday morning. In other cases, in one case in particular, which I can't remember now exactly when it happened, they basically dumped my letter, which was clearly indicated to be intended for each individual commissioner. They dumped it into a little known and extremely hard to find so-called public comment, some kind of a place where they invite people on the agenda packet to send public comment, but they never read it. It's not a public comment, it's not read in public, and it wasn't delivered individually to any commissioner who may not have known that it even arrived. So, to trust the library's promises is, first of all, something that should be unnecessary. What happened to the First Amendment of the right to petition government for grievances? But the idea that any interposition of somebody else to reach a government official, I think, is completely wrong. And I don't think it's supported anywhere in the law.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think I got what I was asking about. I'm going to ask the respondent now. With in the situation with commissioners, are there anywhere you have where they supply you 2 email addresses or more, and you treat one or more of them as personal, but you correspond with them for library business on a different email address?
Let me just make sure I'm clear what you're asking. Do I conduct business with commissioners using multiple different emails that they may have for different reasons? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it just is a sort of a pattern. Do they maintain separate email addresses that you don't have contact with, but they have a single email address, which is the one that you're in contact with them on?
If they have other email addresses, I'm not aware of it. I use the ones that they've given me. And if a commissioner uses their email address to address the public, then it can be made public. we have 2 commissioners that have worked in the public and used their email addresses, and those were given to Mr. Warfield at a certain time.
But each commissioner has an email address that is the way that all communications with them about library commission business are conducted, correct?
Hello?
I assume that the
Sorry,
answer is yes.
No, I was muted. I'm really not understanding your question, except for to let you know that, again, I communicate with them, and the library communicates with them on their personal email addresses that they've given us.
Yeah. Okay. You communicate with them on each one of them. There's an email address that you communicate with them for all your communications, correct?
With their personal email, correct.
Well, I'm just asking you with an email address, because you're throwing in the word personal. But let me first ask you.
Private.
I know you want to say personal and private, but I'm asking you without regard to whether we classify it as personal, whether we classify it as private. For each commissioner, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like what you've said is for each commissioner, there's an email address that you use for all communications that go to that commissioner. Is that correct?
If I'm understanding you correctly, yes, I use a personal email.
I didn't ask you about personal. I'll get to that, okay? But you've said that there's an email address, and I know you want to call it personal, but let's just establish that you do all your communication with that commissioner through an email address, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's that email address that you've decided to call personal, correct?
I'm not deciding. I'm reading from the Government Code, Section 1 of the California Constitution, and the City Attorney's Good Government Commissioner's consent, disclose to the public that commissioner's personal email address, even if the commissioner has disclosed it to commission staff, except possibly where the commissioner has used it as a matter of course and frequent communications with members of the public to conduct city business.
Who decided at the library commission that the email addresses that you regularly communicate with for the library commissioners are personal? Who decided that?
I don't know. When I came on board, that was the contact list I had.
Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions for the parties. Member Stein, anything else before rebuttals?
I guess I have just 2 more questions for the respondent. So for the respondent, like I know, for instance, that as a task force member, I am a 0% employee of the city of San Francisco. Are commissioners technically 0% employees?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term, that technical term. So if you can rephrase it another way, I can try to answer it.
Do they have to submit their documentation to the city that employees have to submit to the city?
I'm not the expert on that, so I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that question.
And have any of the commission members made specific written requests not to have their personal information disclosed?
That's a matter of policy, so I would imagine, I can't answer that question just to say that's a matter of policy.
Okay, I'm only asking it because I'm referencing California Government Code 6254.3, which says that personal contact information is not, is not a public record unless employees use it to conduct public business, and that employees can make written requests not to have their personal information disclosed. So that's why I'm asking that question.
Yeah, it's a fine question. I just don't think I have the right information to answer that at this time.
All right, thank you.
Well, maybe we should go to rebuttals on this matter. And that would be up to 3 minutes each. First from Ms. Schaub, the respondent. When Cheryl's ready.
Ms. Shaw, you ready to begin?
Sure, thank you.
Go ahead.
I have nothing further to add. I just want to reiterate that this complaint was about emails that Mr. Lambert asked for, not Mr. Lambert, Mr. Warfield asked for, and we responded in a timely manner, letting him know.
Noise in the background. I want, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself.
We're also not disproportionately, essentially killing.
So I have nothing further to add. You've read the letter and you've heard what I've had to say. Thank you so much.
Right? Like, I just want to make sure that
okay, thank you. And then let's clear up whoever's got their background noise issue.
Like, this isn't like we either make this decision tonight or we lose it. I would like to make
somebody has something speaking in the back. Can you please
mute everyone from our end? I believe we can just mute everyone.
Between Curdy and Stockton.
We may need to mute everyone because I'm not getting a response on this. Cheryl or Victor, can you do people are going to have to unmute.
Cheryl, you can right click on everyone's microphone and mute them.
Because when I asked Mr. Yukita about data on whether or not we're actually taking time on the PM side, the response is, well, we have pre-pandemic numbers. So I feel like we could probably track it a little more, especially because downtown is really not back yet. I just don't see an urgency to.
That was it.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Okay, and anyone who doesn't have that background sound, you're welcome to open, unmute. But we needed to unmute everyone to get rid of that sound. That's just how the process works. And so the next item was going to be a rebuttal from Mr. Warfield.
Okay.
What about speaking to?
Please wait.
There's no supporting rebuttals. There's only one rebuttal. And please, I would love it if you would complain to Chair Wolf about me not allowing you to do that. Okay, rebuttal from Mr. Warfield, who's a party to the matter.
Chair Schmidt, I just wanted to make sure that Ms. Schaub had completed her.
Yeah, she did? Said she did. Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Warfield, are you ready?
I just want to say that if I had a lot of trouble understanding, I think basically Ms. Schaub said she hadn't really much to or anything to say. If you'd like to give her some time, because it was very hard to understand with that background talking going on, I'm happy to be okay with giving her either additional time or a repeat.
No, go ahead, please.
All right, so let me know when to start.
Go ahead, Mr. Warfield.
All right, thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Library Users Association Executive Director. First of all, I think it's very simple. There's been a lot of going in circles about all kinds of possibilities. What's very clear is there was a request made, fairly straightforward, and a very clear response. Nothing doing, we're giving you nothing. There were no specific statutes provided and no information. Those things are wrong. With respect to all the other stuff, whether somebody is willing to pass something along or whether somebody is willing to bring something to somebody and so on and so forth, I don't think is relevant. It's not in the law. I appreciate the questions that Member Stein and Member Schmidt asked, and one of those is, what's private or personal emails? There is no such thing as far as I can tell in the law. The law simply says that, for example, with a police officer or a judge, you're not to give out their home address. It doesn't say their personal home address. It just says you don't give that out. And certain very specific people are exempted from having certain things given out. There's no place a definition of private or personal email, nor what do you do about the revelation of those things to those who are asking. I believe that it's been determined that when people use their private phones or some other so-called personal or private item for the purpose of doing a government business, those things are subject to disclosure. And in the same way, when people are using their emails to do the public's business, and they're not employees, they're not paid, the commissioners, as far as I know, they're not considered employees. Basically, there is no exemption that they are creating by defining a non-existent in the law term and by claiming non-existent in the law privileges. Now, Ms. Schaub said something. She said quite a few things that are dead wrong in her response, which I don't and didn't want to get into. Neither do I want to get into, but I can tell you that her testimony is wrong, and I would like you to ask her, what two commissioners did they supposedly give me the email addresses of and when? Nothing in her response shows in any way that anything was given at any particular time with any specific email. She's thrown some stuff out floating in the air, but without any explanation of how that answers the request, nor how that satisfies the law. Say it again.
Your time is up.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
there's all of it is floating in the air, and I would appreciate very much if you would ask her to substantiate what she said in her letter and the two supposedly that they gave me.
We do. Yeah, thank you. We have to stop at 3 minutes.
And I'd be glad to answer any
questions.
questions.
You have to use the whole 3 minutes. Thank you. Okay. Member Stein, now's the time we can figure out how we want to handle this matter, whether we want to send it forward to the task force because we've made certain determinations, and how we want to send it forward to the task force. Any thoughts?
Sorry, I was trying to go back and look at their initial response. Did they not mention in their initial response the privacy clauses that they believe were there in the Constitution? And
yeah, I think what did happen was the initial letter said privacy, but there were no numerical sites, and then later on they gave the code citations, the state code citations. So it's possible. And, this, I think, is more of a task force vote, that there was an initial violation because they didn't give specific support and put it in writing. I'm not, I don't know if we necessarily, I'm not even sure if it's clearly required that they do that, but we may find a violation there, yes. And I think some members may feel that the email accounts themselves that are used for all these communications are being called personal, but maybe that's not the case. And I think actually there may be a question here about this. I completely understand if you got something that's a personal phone number, an address, et cetera, yeah, you don't give that up. It's private. But these email addresses seem to be something that may sort of straddle the line.
I'm confused too, because when I came on this task force, I was told that the email that I'm using to communicate with the task force is not private. And if I wanted to keep my private email private, that I should get another email address, because my communication was now going to be public communication and not be, private.
Yeah, and that's what we're told. And so that is, I mean, so that's how we're handling it. Clearly, apparently, maybe that's not how it's being handled elsewhere. And I don't know if the government guide is completely clear on this. And it might be that the provision that talks about if there's a substantial amount of business being conducted, then it's not considered personal. I think it's a question of fact here. It certainly looks like it to me.
Yeah, the one other piece, and I'm trying to look at the timeline here, is what was the date of this letter? Does this all happen over COVID and during the mayor's proclamation?
Yeah, way back. Yeah,
because basically, also, if the sunshine ordinance that requires a citation, but the CPRA doesn't require a citation, right? So if the CPRA is what's operating here, then I don't necessarily see a violation of failing to cite a specific citation of why the information is not given. But I still do have this concern about, it really seems like the policy should be that there are email addresses for commissioners that the public can have access to so that they can email commissioners and not have to go through, some third party to do that. So I guess I would still recommend taking it to the full task force, because it seems that there should be a way for the public to address commissioners. And in this case, there's a conflation of what is the public and what is the private, because the private emails are being used for public business, clearly. So I think to take it to the task force, I guess, to ask about that, if contact email for commissioners that's being used as the sole email address is public and therefore a public record. And then I guess I don't see, if it's during the mayor's ordinance, I think it's less likely that there's a violation of failing to cite something specific, but it could go to the task force for that.
Yeah, I'm with you on all that. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I think that the issues are pretty clear in this, and not that I know how people would vote or what the decision would be, but I do think ultimately the bigger issue to me is a real issue. Can you just call any email address that you use for any purpose private and therefore say it's protected? I don't think it's that broad. No.
Yeah.
And so,
I
think that's going to be the issue that we have to decide on here, because it's not clear if it's unclear in with these facts if those commissioners have done enough to keep whatever emails they have private. I don't know, but we've just got to work with the record that we have on this. So yeah, let's just move it forward, because I think we clearly have the jurisdiction, and these would be in the public realm, this information. So,
All right, is that a motion? Can you?
yeah, let's just say, move to find that, move to send this to the task force because we do have jurisdiction and the records at issue are public. We will ask for determination of timeliness violation and whether the email addresses
Are exempt?
are exempt, are exempt information. Perfect. That's a motion.
Okay, I'll second that.
Public comment on the motion, please.
The motion, just a minute, Mr. Manette Shaw.
Anyone else for public comment? We got one.
Are you allowing both a discussion
No,
during the
you can't.
presentation and public
Manette Shaw
comment?
cannot,
Mr.
Manette
Warfield,
Shaw cannot make public comment because he spoke on behalf of the.
I will ask that everyone stop speaking and let the chair speak.
that's,
Right.
yeah, that's, let me clarify. I believe that it is true that if Mr. Manette Shaw spoke on behalf of a party, he cannot make public comment on the matter. But I'm going to see what Victor and Cheryl have to say about that.
That would be correct.
That would
If
be
you
correct.
spoke as a party to the matter, you cannot speak under public comment anymore.
Okay.
I'll
go
just
to-
submit testimony to the full task force, okay? The
Okay,
good
okay,
government
okay.
guide is
Yeah.
irrelevant.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Manette Shaw. Whether, there's a good chance, someone agrees with you, but, okay, so public comment, I believe we had Sullivan.
Yes.
And is that it? Is anyone else for public comment on this item?
On the motion.
Yeah, on the motion. Okay, when you're ready, Cheryl, let's hear from Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan, you ready to begin?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
I fully agree with what Member Stein has said. I think she's right on. And when does a public employee's personal privacy interests outweigh the public's right to access records? This question was at the crux of City of San Jose versus Superior Court, in which the California Supreme Court unanimously held that the public has a right to see emails and text messages pertaining to public affairs that are sent from or received on government employees and officials' personal devices and email accounts. This is because they're being used for government work, and it's based on a public record is defined as any writing containing information related to the conduct of the public's business, prepared, owned, used, or retained by any state or local agency, regardless of physical form or characteristic. Also, like if Mr. Yankee or I email a government official, our email is public because we are voluntarily taking public inquiry and asking about public government business. And that is why I use one email for specifically doing that. And I agree with Member Stein suggesting that the commissioners also use one email to do the government's business on. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. I believe that's the end of public comments, so we could proceed with a vote on the motion.
Chair Schmidt?
Aye.
Chair Schmidt, aye. Member Stein?
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Moved by Chair Schmidt, seconded by Member Stein to send the matter to the full task force, that there is jurisdiction and the records are public. The committee also asked for a determination of a timeliness violation and question whether the email addresses are exempt information.
Good. We can move to number 6.
Yes. Okay. Item number 22001, complaint filed by Andrew Cisneros against Caroline Salaya and the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency for allegedly violating Administrative Code sections 67.1, 67.8, 67.9, 67.21, 67.25, and 67.26 by failing to respond to an immediate disclosure request in a timely and or complete manner.
All right, I'll start by asking, is Mr. Cisneros here?
Present.
Thank you. And anyone for the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency and or Caroline Salaya?
Hello, this is.
Hello? I didn't catch your name. I think we may have had the name was cut off. Hello?
Can you guys hear me?
Now I can. Yeah, could you say your name again?
Yes, my name is Julie Kirschbaum. I'm the transit director. I'm here on behalf of myself and Carolyn Salaya, who is at an SFMTA board meeting running our public comment.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. So we will have up to 5 minutes from each of the parties. And let's start with the complainant. We've already looked at the documentation, so we're already quite familiar with the case to each side. So Mr. Cisneros, when Cheryl's ready, you may proceed.
Mr. Cisneros, are you ready to begin your statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Andrew Cisneros. First, I want to say thank you for having this ordinance in the administrative code for San Francisco. It has helped me in the past, and the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force has made decisions regarding my requests in labor proceedings and had been granted that in the past, and I gave copies of those decisions. They should be included in the agenda. If there's any questions that you need to ask, feel free to ask me during these 5 minutes. But I do seek clarification on the reason why the SFMTA is keeping my request, is withholding my request. They put it under official information privilege, and that was only invoked at the very end of my request process. The process started in early September and ended early November with no records being disclosed. And I will thank you again for the task force. You have helped me in the past, and hopefully you can help me now in my time of need for these records. Thank you.
Does that complete your statement, sir?
Yes, ma'am. If the task force has any questions, feel free to ask. I think the documents I presented to you, Miss Canadici, over the weekend. I seen them this morning, and yeah, that's everything that the task force had made decisions on regarding my request. And also I do have one more thing I'd like to speak on. I seek the clarification for their reason for non-disclosure. And also, I don't think if they are invoking that privilege, I don't think they met the burden. if there is one to be made. And also, I'm kind of wondering about I'm unsure of the time guidelines. When I started, this was early September, and there was a couple of extensions that were made by the SFMTA. Those were timely extensions, but I was never given a reason what labor proceeding they were talking about, and that's where I seek a clarification on this. And I think that's it for me for tonight, ma'am. Thank you.
Are we ready for Ms. Kirschbaum? Dean, you're mute. Dean?
Sorry. Yeah, let's go ahead with the respondent.
Ms. Kirschbaum, are you ready to speak?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You may begin.
Thank you. And my apologies in advance. This is my first opportunity to address the task force. And if I don't cover everything, happy to answer anything in response. This particular request had a small number of responsive emails. It was about 7. It is a case that was going through the grievance process and now is in arbitration. It is something that we needed legal guidance on, and the attorneys that needed to respond to us were not available to respond sooner. It was our intention to respond to this quickly. We did try to communicate throughout the process where we were in terms of timeline. This did occur during the mayor's emergency order, which we do think officially covers the extended time period, but it is never our intention to drag this out. So we do apologize that we were not quicker, but we do feel that this information was not made public because of the nature. It involves sensitive personnel and labor negotiation issues, as well as the MTA strategy for this grievance process.
All right, thank you. Anyone else on behalf of the respondent? None. I guess we probably should move on to questioning from members. Member Stein, do you have anything for either of the parties?
I guess I'm a tiny bit confused about citing Evidence Code 1040 and why it applies in this case. 1040, I believe, is part of Article 9, Official Information and Identity of Informer. And the way that the claim was originally made of why the information wasn't given was under this 1040 clause, right, of the Evidence Code. And what that says, as far as I can tell, is that if information was acquired in confidence by a public employee in the course of his or her duty, that they could make a claim that they want that they want their identity to remain confidential. But that's not the same as there being an ongoing case and a labor dispute and, being worried about strategy being revealed. So I'm like a little bit confused about how to read this, because from what I understand from 1040 as well, someone who's an informer has to ask for confidentiality. So I was going to ask you, did you receive a request for confidentiality from whoever gave you this information? And do you have any documentation of a request for confidentiality?
That's a question directed at the respondent.
Yeah, at the respondent.
if I understand you correctly, the people who sent the emails did request confidentiality.
It would really help if you had submitted those emails with information redacted showing that there was a request for confidentiality, I will just say, and that might be something that you want to think about putting in your packet if this goes forward. So for me, there's this question about whether or not these records are public and whether they're properly withheld as exempt again. But now I feel like this whole other reasoning is being given that wasn't given initially of strategy in a, in a labor dispute. I'm not sure I have any other direct questions. I mean, I had this question of why does the evidence code apply here, and can you show there was a claim of confidentiality? I'm not sure that that's even what you want to apply here. I guess I could ask, and I will ask, did you do any searches for these documents, and was there really nothing that could be given with the important information redacted?
We did do a search. We had very little correspondence in general on this topic. We identified 7 responsive emails, and we did not think that they could be effectively provided redacted.
And was that in every case where those 7 emails, it was an issue of somebody's confidentiality, an informer's confidentiality, or it was somebody else's confidentiality? Like a lawyer's confidentiality?
I'm not sure that I'm familiar enough with the code. My apologies to answer that question. I don't believe that there were attorneys included in the emails.
Okay. I guess those are my questions.
All right. And just to you, Member Stein, I do agree that the application of 1040 here is it's unclear whether this is the kind of case where they should be entitled to withhold under 1040. Yeah, I think that's going to be something that has to be looked at the task force. It would be better for the respondent if they were to be a little more clear about why they should be entitled to rest on 1040, because you do have to show certain basic predicate facts, such as Member Stein was talking about. At least part of that privilege involves informants, and that's very limited kind of situation. Okay, first question to respondent. You said there were 7 emails that were responsive, correct? Okay, and you but none of them were produced, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you believe that circumstances are still justify withholding those?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a pending arbitration, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now you said something about labor negotiations and bargaining. What negotiations are you referring to?
I was referring to this case and having implications for issues that could come up in the upcoming 258 contract negotiations.
Oh, so there's a concern.
This was a contract. To clarify, it's a contract. It's a contract grievance. It's not a personnel grievance.
Okay, so this is a contract grievance, and you're saying there's a concern that the substance of this could impact an upcoming contractual negotiation?
I think the outcome of the grievance could, yes.
Okay. And so when you had referred to negotiations and I think you said bargaining, is it fair to say that that's what you're referring to? Is that upcoming contractual negotiation with the union?
Yes, but to be specific, the concerns over these emails were that it would put us at a disadvantage in the discussion in the upcoming specific Cisneros contract agreements.
It would be disadvantageous to give the emails to Cisneros. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. I have, I don't have any questions for you, Mr. Cisneros. No more questions. So, Member Stein, anything before we do rebuttals?
I just want to say, like, I don't know that much about evidence code and 1040, but the last line in 1040 section B2 says, in determining whether disclosure of the information is against the public interest, the interest of a public entity as a party in the outcome of the proceeding may not be considered. So they're saying, So
I think it's 1040. This may be a case like a lot of others, I believe, where it's being abused, and I think that's, we're going to see that a lot. People need to really look at the language of 1040 before they use it, because it's not like what maybe they think it is when they get advised, use 1040. So yeah, and it could be a problem here. I want to hear, when we go to the task force, I'm probably going to want to ask even more questions about like, how do you think 1040 applies here? It just doesn't seem to, it's unclear. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Did you have questions?
I don't find it compelling as a reason why this information should be exempt, because it seems misapplied, but maybe I'm not understanding something here. So I would still favor forwarding it to the task force with the question of whether or not these records are public and were properly withheld as exempt.
Yeah, I would too.
But the only thing I think is, like, potentially whether they should have been disclosed, and whether they should have been disclosed with some kind of withholding if there was a legitimate reason why some of the information in them could not be disclosed.
I'm going to just allow the rebuttals but what you just said, I think that's going to flow into how we decide to move this forward. So we're going to do up to 3 minutes of rebuttal from each party. First from the respondent when Cheryl is ready.
First one, are you ready to begin?
Sure. And, again, this is a case where we got legal guidance. I'm not going to be able to do a better job of explaining why we use 1040 than what is, outlined in our written response. And, we look forward to the guidance of the full task force on this one.
All right, great, thank you. And then we'll hear from the complainant again, a rebuttal period of up to 3 minutes when Cheryl's ready.
Are you ready to begin?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Yes, the arbitration that Ms. Kirschbaum speaks of, I'm not aware of. There was arbitration set. The grievance procedure started almost a year ago. There was an arbitration set in May. Unfortunately, the arbitrator had passed away, unfortunately, untimely. And that was the last we heard about it. And I have not heard anything about a set date for an arbitration regarding this at all. So if this is the labor proceeding that she is speaking of, I have no other labor proceedings on my agenda coming up or even talked about. So I don't know what labor proceeding she's speaking of.
Okay, anything else?
And also,
Oh,
yes, also I see clarification. I see clarification. If they were going to think if this disclosure of this record was considered confidential, was there ever a set time that they had to disclose that in their searches? And that's pretty much it so far. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we can figure out if we're going to move this and how we're going to move this on to the full task force. Member Stein, any further ideas? I'm pretty much with you on it. It looks like we need to look at the 1040 issue. I have serious reservations about whether it sounds like the kind of case where you can use 1040. You know, I think there are going to be certain situations where, yeah, 1040 applies. There is somewhat of a second question because 1040 includes a balancing test.
Right.
And so, you know, there's a somewhat of a legal question there that, you know, we can probably either we just don't even look at that, but I think we need to raise it and think about whether we could just say, well, sorry, local law is going to trump state law balancing here. And so I think that should be considered also. 7 emails, so we know, I think it's important that we know what this is about, the 7 emails. I'm not sure if I see, you know, that this is about bargaining. I don't know if they can really stand on that leg.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I just say for the respondent, I think if you want to rely on this and come and defend it, you need to understand it and you need to be able to explain it because it doesn't seem to me, it doesn't seem to necessarily apply. And even if you look at that public interest test, it specifically disallows that you might be a losing part. You know, you can't say because we might be at a disadvantage if this is made public, we don't want it public. So I would move to forward it to the task force with the question of whether or not these records are public and were properly withheld as exempt under 1040, and whether there might be an additional violation of 67.26 because there was no minimal withholding, but rather everything was withheld in full. And that's my motion.
Second. We can do public comment.
Okay. Just a moment, Mr. Sullivan. Member Stein?
Yes.
Yeah, I just, let's see, you are moving to the task force.
With the question of whether or not these records are public.
Are exempt under 1040.
And are properly withheld as exempt under 1040. As well as whether there's a violation of 67.26 for not having minimal withholding. And that is it.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
So we have Sullivan up first. Do we have a second for public comment? Okay, whenever you're ready, Cheryl, let's hear Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan, are you ready to begin?
Yes,
Go ahead, sir.
I agree with you guys about the abuse of Evidence Code 1040. I think that if any custodian can find 1040 and claim 1040, they can deny public records and public information at will. But I also want you to look at San Francisco Sunshine Ordinance Section 6724B, which is litigation material. And one says, notwithstanding any exemptions otherwise provided by law, the following are public records subject to disclosure under this ordinance. And I'll only read one of them. A record previously received or created by a department in the ordinary course of business that was not attorney-client privileged when it was previously received or created is public. It's a public record. So look at 6724B, litigation material. And there's other ones too that might apply. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, I think public comment is over. So Cheryl, when you're ready, we can vote on this.
Member Stein?
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Chair Schmidt?
Aye.
Chair Schmidt, aye. Moved by Member Stein, seconded by Chair Schmidt to move that the case shall be forwarded to the task force with the question, if the records are properly exempt under 1040 and to find a violation of 6726 for not having minimal withholding.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Ready for item number 7?
Yes, please.
Okay, item number 7, file number 22004, complaint filed by Karaoke Uhuru, I hope I pronounced that correctly, against the police department for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 6721 by failing to respond to a public records request in a timely and or complete manner.
All right, I will start by asking, is Karaoke Uhuru present?
Yes, I am.
Great. And do we have a representative of the police department? Is there anyone here for the police department?
Press *6 if you think you've muted yourself.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and we'll check again whether anyone is here on behalf of the police department, because with technology, sometimes people check back in. But if you're here and you're having trouble unmuting, we're going to go ahead and hear from Karaoke Uhuru. And you have up to 5 minutes to tell us about your case. We've already had a chance to look at the documents in the file. When Cheryl's ready.
Great. Sure. I think one thing that might help with attendance, and I certainly think that, these long meetings are overly burdensome. I know to some extent some of this cannot be helped, but me being on hold or, waiting on the line for over 2 hours just seems like a bit much. So I can understand why people might not, want to take on this process. And I think that if you guys were to set up intervals, and the whole matter, the entire matter has to take 20 minutes, and you can just, start the next one, at every 20-minute interval, then that would help folks to arrange their schedules accordingly. Or alternatively, you could just give kind of like a 3-minute warning to say, here's a text message, here's an email, what have you, whatever contact information they prefer, and say your matter is going to be up in 3 minutes, and then they can, jump on the line. So anyway, that's just a suggestion. Now, to my issue, I just had a clarification that I needed from anyone who might be representing the police department, because what I'm understanding is that the repository of their records is a different California agency. And their initial response wasn't really clear on because their initial response was, we don't have what you're looking for, contact the Sheriff's Department. And I don't know whether that means contact the Sheriff's Department because they think I'm looking for the Sheriff's Department's records, or does the Sheriff's Department act as a repository for not only dispositions for the Sheriff's Department, but also for San Francisco Police Department? So, kind of maybe the terse nature of that initial response led to a lot of people's time being wasted. But I guess that's the only question that I have, that somebody can follow up and just let me know, is the Sheriff's Department, is their database, the database of record for San Francisco PD's dispositions as well. So I think that's what they were trying to say in the second offering that they sent over, a couple hours back, right before the meeting started, or maybe 3 hours back. They kind of explained a little bit better, but I think, just to be clear, it only took one sentence to say the information you're looking for, the Sheriff's Department is actually holds the database that contains the records from San Francisco PD for the disposition that you're requesting. Whether or not they have an obligation to go ahead and just have that stuff forwarded over, because that's kind of, as far as I'm concerned, that's a administrative decision. They can outsource the holding of their records to anyone, right? It can be a private party, who knows, but they're still responsible for their own records, regardless of who they outsource the task to. So, so that would be, another note, is to say, if you're outsourcing some of your data housing to anyone, regardless of whether it's a Sheriff's Department, any other agency, then you would still be responsible for getting those records, accessing those records when needed or when requested. So those are the only two points that I need to make. And I guess if someone could follow up at some later date, then that would be sufficient. But between now and then, I'll go ahead and submit a Public Records Act request to, San Francisco Sheriff's Department, and hopefully, that'll satisfy my original PRA request. That's all I have.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Haru. Stick around. We will probably we'll be discussing a case a little further. But is there anyone here for the police department at this time? Okay, looks like they're not. So this is when we ask questions of the parties. I will say, is there anyone here to speak on behalf of either of the parties, other than the parties themselves? Okay. Did I hear you, Cheryl? Were you asking the question?
No, I wasn't asking a question. I was just going to remind you that you need to ask if there is somebody to speak on behalf of Mr. Uhuru.
Thank you.
The respondent.
Thanks for catching me on that. I appreciate that. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I will say to Mr. Uhuru that, yeah, I have kind of the same questions about this, but we may have also questions of you, and I will defer to Member Stein if she has any questions to start with.
Yeah, I just have a few for Mr. Uhuru. One is, did you try to write them back when you got their initial response and clarify where the records might be?
No, I didn't have any inkling that the records might be anywhere. To me, the way I read it was that the records don't exist, because that's how I read the wording. So I just felt like the wording was unclear. It's not to say that, I couldn't have tried harder to clarify. I'm sure I could have, and they could have tried harder to clarify. But to me, the way I read it was that what you're asking for, doesn't exist. Talk to the sheriff's department, and I didn't even know why. They could have told me to talk to anyone. I mean,
Right.
I'm not asking for anything of the sheriff's department, so I don't know why I would contact them.
Okay, and then you cite in your documentation this kind of section A where it shows arrestee exoneration, gives it a code number that they're supposed to enter when they share it with the California DOJ. What document does that appear in? Where does that come from?
That's California Penal Code directly.
Okay.
So that's why, if you have an obligation to send information to California Department of Justice, then it just seems absurd that you say, oh, I don't have it. Well, by law, you have to provide it to the Department of Justice, so you must have it. And so maybe you have a different reason for declining the request, but the reason can't be I don't have it, right?
Okay, or we don't know where it is. So, and the other
something.
And those incident reports that are included in the packet, I think, did you include them or did the respondent include them? Did you include some incident
the ones
reports
that came over today?
Did that come today? I don't know. It was
For
just
me, it came. I received additional information today, so maybe you received it sooner than I did. But I did not provide any incident report numbers, so that would have come from SFPD.
Have you had a chance to look at those?
Yes, I have.
Is there anything in them that in any way relates to showing exonerated, how many exonerated arrests there have been?
Not that I can tell, no.
Okay, I couldn't either.
What's that?
Yeah, I couldn't tell either, so that's why I just thought maybe you would know, like if that was in any way responsive to your request.
No, I don't think it is. Based upon, once again, their language is convoluted, right? But based upon, what I can make out from their response was that here's what we do have. We still don't have what you're asking for, but if you're asking for just everything we have, on this kind of subject, then this is what we can give you. But you still need to go to the sheriff's department if you want the specific exonerated arrestee information. That's what I took out of their communication. But reading through the data, it didn't seem that there was any exoneration information there anyway.
So it's not even clear that those incident reports are incidents that were related to people who were later exonerated.
I would say I'm pretty confident that it's inclusive. If anyone was exonerated, it would be included in that larger data set. But I think this is pretty much everything that they had for 2019 and 2020. I think that's what they were saying, is that here's everything all of the arrests that we made, and then some of these maybe have been exonerated or not, but we don't have that extra level of reporting detail because it seems like maybe the sheriff's department is taking whatever action to tick those boxes and then send on, because they can have whatever arrangement they want to have, right? So maybe they send a bunch of stuff over to the sheriff's department. They have like a little working group. The working group identifies the stuff that needs to go to the sheriff, and then they send everything to the sheriff, right? So all of that kind of back end, process, who knows how they want to, divvy up those tasks, but that's what it sounds like, is that they've got some other layer of work that is being done at the sheriff's department, or with, I would think, some kind of, committee that they have created with the sheriff's department. But this is not anything that I requested. It's not specific to what I requested. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Okay, thank you. Those were all my questions.
I don't have any further questions on this. I do think that you're probably going to get anything you're going to get, because it looks like it all is. I don't know anything about where these records are held, but they did tell you go to the sheriff's, and so there's a good chance that what you're looking for, it's just being held there as opposed to within the confines of the police department, just as a practical matter. I guess in this now we're talking among the members here. Well, one, we don't have anyone here for the police department, so I think we have a violation there. I'm not sure if we're in terms of the merits of this. It's plausible to me that, yeah, the police don't keep anything on this specific issue, that it's a sheriff thing. I think that's plausible. And that's something that Mr. Uhuru may just not quite have, you know, he may not have exhausted that option yet. I would have asked the police department if they had withheld anything, if they thought there was anything that was exempt, and I think they would have said no, but they're not here. So, you know, but again, you know, we can't make any real decisions here. We can pass it on and, you know, tell the task force what they're looking at here. And so I think we recommend, I guess I should let you speak, members' time, before I make a motion. Do you have a motion?
I'm in general agreement with you. So I'm fine with the motion.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just make a motion that we move this to the full task force. There is jurisdiction. These are public records. There is well, I think we want to move and note that the police department did not show up. So there's an arguable violation by not coming to the complaint committee hearing. And also whether the police department's production of no documents, because they claim that they're in the possession of someone else, is proper.
I don't know if you want to add the violation sections that might be violated there, but I would just say, you know, failing to attend the hearing is a violation of 67.21E.
Add that in.
You know, 67.21 for you know, not providing the information in a timely or complete manner, and then 67.21C for not sufficiently helping the petitioner locate the documents of interest. I mean, it's basically all your points, but I'm just attaching the numbers.
I mean, I'm fine with the last one, C, although I wonder, just sort of like in discussion, I mean, they did tell him to go to the sheriff. Do you think that we would consider that to be not enough? Is there something that you think we would require as our force?
I mean, it's sort of a borderline situation, but I have to say I had the same reading of it that the petitioner had when I looked at it. It just seemed like, oh, we don't have it, try them. It didn't seem like, oh, we give it to them and they file it, and this is where you can find the information. It was so casual and offhanded. It just seemed like, oh, it's not us, try them. And even at this point, we don't know if the petitioner tries them, if they're going to say they have that documentation, you know, they have that information or not. It seemed, you know, so I feel like it's kind of it's pretty gray area, but I had the same reading that it was just it almost seemed like, not here, try somewhere else.
You convinced me. Good. Yeah. Let's include that. So to Cheryl, the motion is I think it has three components. If we have a motion.
Just before you say that, Chair Schmidt, I just want to acknowledge something about referring a complainant to the sheriff's department. You know, in my business, in what I do, and I get complaints a lot from people who say, "Oh, I didn't get anything from this department," when the either the appropriate custodian was not notified, or they didn't know that there is a specific email for public records requests. And so what I do is when I get them, I say, "Thank you for the email. We don't have records here, but let me tell you who could probably help you, and let me know if you get that assistance." I do that all the time. So this could be a situation where something like that happened.
Yeah. It seems like what we're looking at is the sufficiency of their attempt to say, "Oh, you should go, you know, the records you're seeking are elsewhere." They didn't tell them that. They didn't say our records are over there. They just said, "Oh, go talk to them." And also, I think in terms of what Cheryl's saying, they could have given them a specific guidance as to who to contact at the sheriff's office. That could have also helped. So I think it's a question of fact for us, whether there's a violation when this goes forward.
Well, it's just a question of if it was sufficient. I mean, I'm going back and looking at it. It could be read either way.
Yeah.
Because you don't have if for responsive records, contact the sheriffs directly, a separate agency of the city and county of San Francisco. Here's a link to their website, and it's just a support homepage.
Yeah. I mean, it may be that it is sufficient. I don't know how I would, eventually vote on that. I think it's a close call.
Yeah.
But I think it is a call that we need to make. We need to have some sort of semblance of, what are you supposed to do in this situation if you're somewhere in the city? Okay, so I let's see. Cheryl, did the motion seem to read out right? We have was it 24C violation for not attending?
No, 6721E for not sending the person most knowledgeable. That's what it is.
Okay. I'm yeah, okay. And
then we have 6721C for not referring the petitioner to the correct person at the sheriff's department.
Yeah, and then there was also, I think it was B. I think Member Stein put the number on it for failure to produce in a timely manner.
Yeah, I will say too, just that when I try to go to the site that I don't have the link here, right? Because we just have the PDF. But when I try to go to the URL that's given, it's just an error. I just get an error message. So.
Okay, got it.
So we want to open this up to public comment.
What do you think? Will you second my motion?
Oh, I second the motion. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, public comment time.
Okay, I think you guys have addressed almost everything. I don't know whether in the motion you had included whether or not it's proper for them to refer a requester to a third party for information that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
logically, you did add that one in. Okay.
Yes, 6721C. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so is there anyone who wants to make any member of the public who wants to make public comment about this matter, about the motion?
Yes, please.
We have number one. Anyone else? Okay, Cheryl, whenever you're ready, we have one public commenter, I believe.
Mr. Warfield, are you ready to begin?
Yes, just let me know when to start.
Go ahead, sir.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users, 2004 at yahoo.com. Also, P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. Thank you for making the motion. It sounds as though you've gotten most, if not all, of key points. What I would like to just say is this. You went ahead with the respondent not present, and I think that's appropriate. It certainly seems not arguable, but factual, that there was a violation for their non-appearance, unless there perhaps later turns out some reason that you consider to be extenuating or excusing. And I'd only like to just mention again what I mentioned on an earlier case where the complainant was not present, that I believe you just simply threw out the complaint or ended it in some fashion. If I've misunderstood that, my apologies. In any case, we're not party to this complaint and the specifics of it, but as I said, as a matter of form, I think that it's appropriate to at least give the complainant a chance to go ahead with the complaint if they're not present, when in fact you don't throw out or find violations of everything on a complaint where the respondent is not present. So I think that's something that needs to be considered in any kind of future review of your procedures, if in fact this is what your procedure is currently. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have other public commenters?
I guess we can go ahead with a vote.
Chair Schmidt?
Aye.
Chair Schmidt, aye. Member Stein?
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Moved by Chair Schmidt, seconded by Member Stein, to send the matter to the task force to find that there is jurisdiction, that the records are public, and to find a violation of 6721E for not sending a person most knowledgeable to the hearing, 6721C for not referring the complainant to the correct person at the Sheriff's Department, and 6721B for failure to produce records in a complete and or timely manner.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Cheryl, next item.
Oh, can I just make one clarification?
Sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, just that 6721E says that they have to send an authorized representative.
We usually use the language person most knowledgeable.
Yeah, but that can make it sound like they just sent someone who wasn't knowledgeable, but they didn't even send a representative. So that's the only reason I bring that up.
And well, on that point, you know, I don't think this case is where it matters, but legally, there's a big difference between those two terms, authorized representative and person most knowledgeable. I'm just noting that for y'all.
Okay.
You want to change the motion? You want to rescind the motion or amend it?
I think we can just leave it, but when it comes to the task force, we should just be clear that there was no representative there.
Yeah, they didn't send anyone.
Yeah, okay. Okay, ready for the next item?
Yes.
Item number 8, proposed changes to speed up the task force process.
All right. This one is going to start with me as the chair. As the file documents will reflect, I found two very interesting letters that had come in to us from members of the public in late November from Sullivan and Anonymous, who we know very well. And I thought that there was enough substance in those letters that I would write my own sort of in detail response, partly because a lot of the thoughts that I saw were very similar to thoughts I've had. And I believe that the state of the task force is that there's the number of cases that are pending is just unworkable. It's probably 5 times the number it should be. In my mind, there should be a completely different scenario where things come in and we get the results to people immediately or very immediately, and that's just not plausible at this time. And so how do we do that? Well, we could try to get money. I know there's budget requests, and yet until that happens, I feel like we need to figure out how we can get more cases decided per month, because it's just, this number is just going to go up and up and up, and it just like it has continually for maybe a year and a half or more. So I think the number of cases right now that's pending is something like 180 versus like maybe a little over a year ago is about 100. I know that there's some details about like maybe half of the cases are anonymous cases, but I don't care because that's a big number and people are having to wait. And it's partly because we only have so much hearing time available to us unless we negotiated more. And the members of the task force, we have a certain personal time limitation. I think we all would be happy to work a little more if we saw that, we could get rid of this backlog by doing so. So the anonymous proposal was the first document that I looked at, and it was pretty much one item which I thought was a great idea, is to allow a consent calendar that would be filled by committees who hear complaints, would send appropriate matters to a full task force consent calendar. And that makes sense to me. I mean, I think that's a true legitimate use of a consent calendar because it's a committee who has multiple members who looks at a case and moves it on. Now, in doing that, I had the realization that the other way that things are going to a consent calendar, I need to figure out, because I don't think there's a committee involved there. And so I'm not sure if one person should be sending things to a consent calendar, but that's a different matter. But I like Anonymous's recommendation. Sullivan has 8 ideas, although several of them I don't need to spend much time on. The primary idea was his number 2 out of 8. I think the fundamental idea that Sullivan had that I like is that we really are looking at, if you look at the way the ordinance is structured, and even the way that state law is, this task force is built in a whole lot of procedures that may be there because they're there for good reasons, but they're not necessary by statute. And including even the fact that we have 2 or more hearings on every single case that gets pushed forward, which include a committee and a full task force. And that's something that's been devised on top of what the ordinance requires. And we had to think about that, because are we going to spend all our time that is allotted to us for committee hearings to do double hearings or quadruple hearings where we have reconsideration, et cetera, et cetera? We just don't, there's a bottleneck, and we don't have any way around it that I can see. I do appreciate Chair Wolf's measure to try to move certain cases through his consent calendar, but I want to see results, and I think that it's not enough. I think we need to consider other measures. Sullivan's idea was we just have our members look at the files and push the files, maybe, a number of members or maybe at a committee, but members read the files and then they send cases forward for the task force hearing, that being the task force hearing, which is the one that is required by the ordinance. And if a petitioner doesn't want a hearing, we don't make them have a hearing. And everything that I'm talking about here, I know that it reduces what currently exists in terms of process. I don't have any interest in doing any of those things, except for the fact that I think that the direction we're headed is just, we can't go there. We have to be realistic. We have to face the problem of this backlog. And I think that we can cut down on our time spent substantially by making some changes. And those are the ones that Anonymous talks about, Sullivan talks about. Sullivan talks about allowing, not even having opening statements. They're not required by statute, but letting parties speak after they've been questioned for 3 hours at a hearing of the task force. And so that's an opportunity to present a case. And that would be what a hearing would look like. I like that idea. And we could get through 10 or 15 cases, maybe that's too optimistic, but if we cut out some of the extra. So I've noted in my documentation, and I'll just refer to the document, that those ideas of Sullivan's that I do like, and there are several. And then I also recommended, and I've heard this from a couple members, including member LaHood, that we try to figure out a way that we can take one of our monthly hearings, our complaint hearing, EOTC hearing, and have it be strictly a task force hearing complaints hearing, so that we can try to catch up. We could try to catch up to get to a point which is not, it's a fraction of the numbers that we're looking at right now as to backlog. And, I know that this ultimately would reduce the amount of people's opportunities to speak, But the result, I believe, is that it allows members of the public to bring their complaints to the task force and not have to go to 4 hearings, 5 hearings, and they get results immediately, fast, and they get an answer. And that's one, it's a trade-off. And that's ultimately the theme of what I've got here. So that's my spiel for this evening. My last spiel. Member Stein, any?
Well done, Chair Schmidt.
Thank you.
Sure. So I just will weigh in on some items that I definitely support and items that I'm not sure about, but I would love to also hear public comment on this. I think it's already come up a couple times in comment that there seems to be a lot of support for in absentia hearings. And that's something that I have always supported. And so I think that's great. I feel like it is it's a burden just to write a complaint. And then it's like a whole other level of burden to come to a meeting for 6 hours or whatever it is, waiting your turn to be able to hear your case. And I think our role is not just to get people information, but to understand what's happening with the Sunshine Act. And I don't want to dissuade people from filing cases because they feel the burden of carrying it through is too high. So I would definitely support the in absentia hearings. And then I do support this idea of having a few members review cases with certain criteria in mind, including whether to put it on a consent calendar. And I don't think that has to necessarily, be in a live meeting, although I think it would be good to, if we're reviewing something, it would be good to have some kind of way of documenting how we reviewed it that we could perhaps share with each other outside of, if we're going to do this outside of a meeting. And that could be that there's a sheet that gets attached to it with our evaluation or some manner of doing that. I agree. I think it's absolutely clear in the Sunshine Ordinance that hearings are not mandatory, that hearings are to be had when we find them useful. And I do agree that, not every case is that difficult or presents questions that are not easy to answer or where we really need to bat it around the full task force. So I support that position too of having a few members review a case, and I like that better than having one person decide. And then there's other fail-safes there that I think are good, like allowing any member to remove it and bring it to the full task force, even if three people have said it doesn't need to go, or allowing a petitioner to insist on a hearing if that could be, but I'm not even sure about that actually, because if we think it's really clear and I'm not sure that we want to just leave that to a petitioner to insist on a hearing, because maybe it really isn't necessary. And then I'm unsure, or I'm not too clear about the best way to handle this, removing the opening statements. I know you like the idea of having a rebuttal after questions. The one thing I would just say is, what if people have some new information to add that they feel is important to be considered at the outset of the case? But maybe that doesn't require 5 minutes. So maybe you could have like a couple minutes or 3 minutes if they have something new to say, or a response to give, or a framing to provide, or something that isn't in the initial case. I will say most often I do find the opening statements to be reiterations of what I've already read, and not that useful in most cases. But I wonder if it's wise to go ahead without hearing from the petitioners at all if they feel that they need. This talk about it, but it's in the proposal. Follow the same process for public information and public meetings violations. The way the Sunshine Ordinance Act is written, all of this process of what we're supposed to do only comes in when they start talking about public records, and it's not there for the rules that are given around public meetings. But again, I'm not sure whether it's good to have like 2 different processes there, or just to have parity among the processes. I agree an extra meeting to process cases as a full board is fine as long as we have one less committee meeting and we're not taking up any more administrator resources, because I think our administrator resources are already kind of maxed out at the moment. Unless that changes, unless the staffing we have changes, then if we get additional staff, then maybe I would revisit that. And then,
I was just going to say, Laura, we do have an issue, and that would be when we return to City Hall, we need to have a hearing room available. And so I've already scheduled all the hearings for 2022 with the administrator's office. I'm not sure we could get a hearing room like on another Wednesday, or, the 3 Tuesdays are already taken up, EOT complaint and CAC. And I'm not sure we could get another hearing room.
Can I just ask, since I joined during the pandemic, do the committees also meet at City Hall?
Yes, they do.
So if we gave up one committee meeting per month, then we could presumably take that room for a task force meeting, or no?
That's the idea, Cheryl, is we could just delete one of the Tuesdays and then sub in task force so that the task force would meet twice.
Okay.
And I even thought about doing it for 3 a month until we get the numbers to us, but I didn't propose that. Because I know that the clerk's office has limited resources to give us. And so I thought, well, what can we do within those limitations without trying to expand those over those limitations?
Well, just to let you know,
sure.
Sometimes when we have we have hearings every week, and between doing minutes and setting up for hearings, it's a lot of time. And thank God for Victor, because he does provide a lot of assistance and I'm grateful for. I mean, he is the master. And without his guidance, and also I have to check everything with Alyssa Samara, who is the Chief Legislative Deputy, and Angela, so it may be a while before we could even address those issues. But that is kind of like how my work has been happening, just to let you know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I understand that any of this is any change is it's difficult. It's like pushing a boulder up a hill.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk to Bruce about it, or have discuss it under this very same subject matter at task force in February, that'd be the chance to do it. Come together with the two of you, present what you think would be workable solutions around this whole issue of the backlog. I can tell you that for individual cases, we're pretty much caught up. We had 5 new cases last week, which is pretty minimal for the beginning of the year. And the majority of the cases are for anonymous. They are. So just want to let you guys know that.
Yeah, I guess I'm having a bit of confusion looking at this 180 pending cases, and where are they? I mean,
wait a minute, 180. What do you mean pending? Well, 180.
They're either pending committee hearing or they're pending task force hearing. I just look at the numbers in your administrator's reports every month, and there's about 175, 180 cases that we have backlog right now, I believe.
Yeah. Well,
Chair Smith?
Yeah.
Chair Smith?
Yeah.
When we get a chance, I can provide you my personal summary offline.
That would be
I am tracking
wonderful.
them, and I can try to get you something that's easier to understand. And in addition to all your other comments, we have done some version of it in the past. at one point in time, and there's always controversy every time we change methodology.
Sure.
But we have
sure.
had committees hear items and send them as committee, or not as consent items. But it
Yeah.
all comes down to the members need to agree to a method and stick to it.
Yeah.
You know, we can have one member start pulling everything off consent because they want to hear more. And
Well, yeah, that's very much a concern, and it could be a problem. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and we do
I
need to keep
understand.
everything on a public record. So we do need to schedule everything to be viewed publicly,
Sure.
just
Yeah.
to remain open and consistent. And what else? Yeah, we've tried a lot of the things that you've stated today. We have tried in the past, and it worked to some extent.
Mhm.
And it's just a matter of coming to agreement on how you want to proceed. In terms of the number of the meetings, we are already exceeding our maximum. You know, we were only supposed to temporarily go to 4 meetings per month, but that's already past our max. But in terms of replacing a committee hearing with a full task force hearing, that's no issue, as long as it's on the same date.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice.
Yeah, you know, we can replace a complaint committee with a task force meeting. That's no issue. It's just a matter of room reservations. And we're going on the assumption that we will be going back to City Hall soon. And,
okay.
you know, taking into consideration, it is very difficult to get people to show up at City Hall.
It's more dramatic. And
Sure,
but
there's a lot more work.
There's a lot more work, but they do have the option of, if they are disabled.
Let's not get into that. That's
right.
accommodations, and we do not know about the hybrid situation, if it's going to be a requirement or not. I heard that was something that's being considered at the state level, but I don't know if we're going to be required to be hybrid or not.
Got it. Okay. That's undetermined. Okay. Good information. Very good information.
But if we do go hybrid, the members would need to be in person. The members do not to get the option.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense right there. All right. Okay. Anything else, Victor?
That's about it. It's a matter of negotiating what will work best. And
yeah.
There is one issue that we've kind of let go for the last year due to the emergency, in that we're supposed to have the initial finding within 45 days of submittal. Determination of jurisdiction and whether or not the records are public. We're supposed to make that determination within 45 days of receipt. And due to the emergency, we haven't done it for the past year or so. And we do need to get back to that.
Absolutely. It seems like the delays in the current iteration, and that's one of them. And I understand that could be ascribed to the COVID situation, but we got to figure out a way to get back to that, complying with that. And also, I mean, speaking of time compliance, I really this idea that I hear from people where they go all the way to the point where they get an order of determination and then they can't get their order. We got to figure out a different way to get those done, because they still don't have a resolution when they're there. And we have people here today who were talking about that exact thing. So yeah, the 45-day period and those are things we need to meet. And if we can cut out some things that may be optional so that we can meet those, get rid of the backlog, I'm just sort of trying to get the conversation rolling. That's most of what I'm doing. Yeah, got it. Okay, Cheryl, anything else?
Well, in terms of like today's agenda, up until I think I sent you the email on Friday that we had 6 cases, and 2 of them weren't withdrawn, that we had a request to postpone.
Okay. Yeah, we ended up with 4.
So we ended up with 4 for that reason.
Yeah. And I know that you told me, Cheryl, that we're not really behind, it seems, on putting things through the committees.
Right.
But it's the cases that have been through a committee, but they haven't been to the task force. And then the task force is only looking at 4, 5, 6 cases every month.
Yeah.
That's where I think that's like the tightest spot in the bottleneck right there.
And plus, in terms of waiting for responses, I send out the notice and they're supposed to respond within 5 days, and generally people do, but there are those that do not. And so we really can't schedule that until we get that information.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Understood. Yeah. The ones that are still, not ready to go, I don't think that change, those should be dealt with in any different way. That where you get the complaint in and then you're trying to get a response, etc. No change to that. I think everything that, at least I think, Sullivan, Anonymous, and I were addressing is cases that have been sort of like gotten to the point where they're ready to go and they're ready to either go to a committee or go to the task force. And that's where I see what that, I don't know how many of those 170 would not even be ready for either, but it sounds like that those are the numbers that are either waiting for one or waiting for the other right now.
We're working on it.
And I'm not pointing fingers here. I'm just trying to look at the system as a whole.
Yeah, and come up with a solution that would, satisfy a complainant in that they're getting their date in court, so to speak.
Yeah,
and getting the respondents to either respond or submit to an OD that may not be favorable, where they'd find a violation. And that's not something both parties really want, but oftentimes that's what happens. So.
Yeah, in some cases that is a good outcome right there. Yeah, different cases can go different ways.
Yeah.
Member Stein, did you have any further thoughts on it?
Yeah, I just had 2 things. One is that in this idea of having 3 members review the cases, I think we would really need some clear criteria or a clear way of setting up what they're reviewing for. And, I think that's a piece that's still missing here, is really understanding like what is the agenda of the committee, whether it's a committee that meets in person or a sort of ad hoc rotating committee of people who are assigned to evaluate things. What it is they're trying to accomplish in that initial evaluation, and make sure that it's all like clearly laid out so that people can, give their response and we can have a record of how people viewed it. And then you don't have this in your proposal, but I just want to bring it up as something I think we should also consider, is whether there's any way to shorten hearing times and have time limits on how long each case is heard, or how long each member can question somebody, almost like a congressional hearing where people have a certain time limit, because I think that might be a focusing element in trying to get to the heart of these cases as quickly as possible, and also help reduce the burden on petitioners who otherwise have to be in meetings for hours and hours and hours. So I would just throw that maybe we should be strategizing about that as well if we're looking at how to make this process more efficient and non-duplicative.
Yeah, I think, and I agree with you about the criteria. My initial thought was that the criteria would be similar to what we're using here today, but we would be just doing it on the papers and then sending it to a task force hearing based on that. But I think that the criteria that we have here today is not necessarily optimal. So it would be a tweaking of that, but I agree with you. Criteria. I didn't go the time limits direction, except I try to cut some time out of the, every case, the 10 minutes at the start, which would add up eventually. But I know that's, some people want that 10 minutes, some people don't. But I didn't go into members' time at all yet. Although I think it's a good idea. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. I'd have to, I just didn't want to go there yet. Do you, limit the number of questions? I like the congressional idea. Like you get 5 questions, you get 5 minutes and you're done. I mean, that's a really good idea. And maybe we do something like that.
And then remove rebuttals. I'll tell you, Dean, people are used to and expecting a certain kind of process.
I know that.
To not have a process that they can follow, or that I can, reiterate to them and say, well, this is what we're doing now. We know we didn't do this in the past, but we're trying to get through all our cases. That can make a petitioner feel, oh, okay, is my case being heard, or am I just being rushed through? That's how I see it.
Oh, I agree with you that people have an expectancy now based on how the rules are written right now.
And we get cases every year. I mean, we got about 25 more cases this year than we did last year.
Yeah.
So,
people, you make any change, and that's going to upset that balance. I understand that. Yeah. And so, there's that option, which would not rock that boat, is to not make any changes to the process.
But then that also means that there's a delay in how long it takes for people to get a response and to potentially get their order and to potentially get their information. So I think it can be viewed in more than one way.
Yeah. That's, the options are keep it all the same, but justice is very delayed. And we, spend a lot of time in extraneous hearings that could be spent pushing cases through faster, such as reviewing files and sending them on to task force, and maybe, doing that double task force hearing thing every month. These are all various possible components to a different system, but there may be people who really would not like to change these things. But on the other hand, they don't have to solve this problem. We do. And so that's why I'm just sort of like throwing out what I think are ideas as to how to try to solve it.
Yeah, and I think your ideas are justified, and I agree with some of Laura's suggestions as well. I'm just telling you that, when I get on the phone with somebody and they say to me, well, what does this mean? When are you going to hear my case? Like Mr. Cisneros was another one. When are you going to hear my case? Mr. Norton was one. When are you going to hear my case? And really, fortunately, we came to the holiday, so that part slowed down a bit, as you saw in the December numbers, not quite what they were in November or even in August. I can address these people and say, yes, we're doing what we can to get your case heard. And so that, we had 5 cases at EOT last week. Mm-hmm. So we're getting through it. Yeah. We are. It just, it is a lot of bottleneck at the task force. I am open to another task force meeting on a Tuesday night. Typically, in the past, we have alternated between having CAC and EOT meet every other month on the last Tuesday of the month, and we normally had that second week in whatever month it is, where we're now hearing EOT, and that could be made available to have another task force hearing.
Good. I like that. That's, I think what we may want to do here, and, we're in a committee, we may do something with this today, we may not, but what we might do is sort of like pick a few of these thoughts that we've got and advance them as a, hey, bring it to the task force kind of proposal. I never expected that we'd take all of this and say full package, but we have the ability as a committee, I think, to put the idea out there and to see what people think. And I would want to try to tell people why I think we have to do this, which is, that's pretty much what I set forth in the document.
Okay.
So, Member Stein, what do you think we could try to make a recommendation, or we could not. We could open it to public comment, or we could do something in terms of like, let's, move a few things into a recommendation and then ask for public comment. Do you have any thoughts on, because you just advanced something and it went great. You got it through and it's probably fully implemented by now. I don't know, but
well, I did my thing in 2 stages though, right? Like I actually brought it to the complaint committee as a kind of open process where my point of action was to draft a document, right? So I was able to get public opinion and comment before I actually drafted the final proposal. And then the second time I came around, the action was to adopt a proposal and take it to the task force. So, we haven't heard from the public yet, but I could go either way. There's definitely things I would support up front. I think I indicated them. And then things I wasn't certain about. I've always advocated for in absentia hearings for the petitioner, not for the respondent, because it's in the Sunshine Task Force that the respondent has to be there. I would support having a few members review cases to decide whether they should go to a consent calendar. I would probably support a reduction of time for opening statements. I'm not sure I would support completely eliminating opening statements, but I would be, interested to hear what people had to say about that. And I would support if we do go to this process of having people review cases independently, and we could therefore eliminate a committee meeting per month of having an extra full task force meeting to try to process the cases that we couldn't agree on, or maybe even to process the consent calendar. I don't know, but to try to process more cases efficiently. But I do want to stress, I don't see this as a way to rush anybody through. I see this as a way to kind of work more efficiently, potentially, and give everybody a due hearing in a useful time frame for getting an answer to their records request or their denial of their ability to participate in a public meeting.
Ditto. I don't think this is about giving people short shrift.
I only
there are certain things
I do want to say, Cheryl, I agree with you. I think some people will see it that way, but I don't see it that way. I totally agree that some people will be defensive and just feel like, no, we want to keep the process how it is. But yeah.
And that's what happened with the Project Catalytic. We only got 4 responses out of 8. only one person admitted their violation, and everybody, 4 people didn't respond with letters at all, and 3 people said, okay, yes, we can see, no, we do not, we disagree with your idea of, or your thoughts of violation. This is why. So, I mean, it's a crapshoot when you try these things, because you don't know how people are going to react, whether it's the petitioner or the department. I just would hate to see somebody review a person's case, whether, especially if it's something complex, and they don't get a chance to, and somebody reviews their case and says, well, I see 10 points of issue here, and this is how I think we should do it, and then just skip the committee process and going straight to the task force. I think somebody might say, you know what, I'm not getting my due process because I expected a committee hearing, and I'm going to hear the phone calls, not you guys. It's going to be me. Somebody's going to, and people do call, they do. And so I just try to give them a comprehensive answer so that they're not upset, and just explain the process and no, we have not forgotten you. I'm going to hear.
Okay.
But I think your ideas are good for both of you, and Mr. Sullivan and Anonymous. I'm willing to try new ways to work through this situation. And, obviously whatever the task force or the committees decide to present to the task force as an idea for eliminating this huge backlog, I'm willing to do whatever it is anybody needs.
Yeah.
Super.
I've heard everything that's been said, although we haven't had public comment yet, which is also important. But I'm just trying to think of a way to move this into like a form that could go to the full task force, because I think the nature of this is not quite the same as what you did, Member Stein, which is like a lot of textual changes. This one, it's more about the shifting something to something different. I think what we might be able to do, maybe we pick a number of these, and I could take out of what I wrote, which was, the response to their letters, substantive response. I could develop something that's maybe like an 8-point plan, and it might be that it would be like all the things that you seem okay with, Member Stein. Some of it might be, like compromised time periods on things. But I think the essence we're in agreement on. And I think it's like ways to not have to have every case go through too much. That's not required by law, and which is backing us up. So how does that sound? Maybe I should put something together which is a concrete proposal, and I guess I could bring it to our next hearing, complaint committee. That might be the way I've got to do it, because then I'd ask you to see if that's if it's allowable from you, and then we would move it forward. What do you think we should do? Is that going to take too much time or too much process?
I don't think so. I mean, these are, given the fact that you want to do it as correctly as possible, or maybe not even correctly, but with as much chance of success as possible. I think, having a little bit of time to process my feedback, public feedback, and just, make it into an 8-point plan, or, however you want to do it, is a great suggestion.
Yeah. And a point would be, like you say, one would be allow hearings in absentia.
Mm-hmm.
2 would be a different way to get cases on the consent calendar. 3 would be a different way maybe to, get these orders of determination to people in a reasonable time period. Now, we haven't talked about that yet, so that may not be included. But yeah, those would be each of the points, for example, of the 8-point plan. Okay, why don't I just, we don't have to do something substantive in terms of a motion here tonight. I still want to hear public comment. But I'll draw something up and it'll be more specific, and we'll look at it and see if we can make a motion on it next meeting. Okay?
Okay.
Good.
Good.
All right, Cheryl, Victor, any more thoughts before we go to public comment?
This will be next, your motion, to develop for the next complaint committee meeting?
Yes, yes.
I just want to make sure I have that in my notes. Yeah, I'm good on it. I'm good. Okay. Like I said, okay. I'm in this job and I'm committed to making, getting people the results that they want by allowing them to have a hearing process where they're not going to pull their hair out saying, wait a minute, I thought that will be workable for people as they come through the whole process. So that's my concern.
Got it. Absolutely.
We have public comment now?
Yeah,
yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, we have one public commenter. Anyone else?
Sullivan,
number 2.
Okay, Mr. Warfield, are you ready?
Just let me know when to start.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Peter Warfield, Executive Director, Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. First of all, I'd like to thank you for considering how to improve generally how you work, and the key thing is certainly your backlog. I'd also like to say that I certainly hope that your agenda should be more specific as to what exactly it is you're proposing. It says discussion and action. And I also would like to say that the law doesn't give maximums, the law gives minimums, and I certainly would be happy to answer any questions or expand on anything that I might say that you'd be interested in. I've had a lot of experience with the Sunshine Task Force over many years. So the first thing I want to say is that I think of the Supreme Court building, which has a beautiful phrase on the top of it in large capital letters, equal justice under law. So I think justice is key here. The first thing I want to say is that there's a lot you can do that has nothing to do with cramming through more what I would call swatting at mosquitoes. Slap, slap, slap. So I appreciate the Chair Schmidt's responses to very specific things, and I haven't taken them all in. But with regard to my, what's the paragraph that I get, you quite intelligently and reasonably talk about how much time is spent on complaints, and then you conclude there's not really time for anything else. Well, first of all, I would recommend urgently that you read several of the annual reports that seem to have stopped coming around 2016. And there they made some broad generalizations, and I think those are very useful. You're having a pandemic of problems and complaints. To just swat one by one by one by one without doing what you can do in Section 67.30, I think, is causing more problems and inefficiencies and problems. So first of all, you have a 45-day requirement for providing a decision. Has anybody ever worked toward that? I think there needs to be direct testimony from people who were there, and there's no reason to wait with hearings for 5-day responses. Go ahead without them if they don't want to give it. The direct testimony is urgent because that's how you'll get to the bottom of what's going on. You don't need committee meetings at all to determine jurisdiction. They used to do that in a single meeting. I have a lot of other things to suggest for your own internal, and I'd be glad to answer any questions or expand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. All
Do
right.
we have other public commenters?
Sullivan?
Oh, yes, Mark Sullivan. Are you ready, sir?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I like a lot of the ideas, conversations you guys have been having. My thing on eliminating the opening statements, it more has to do with getting the hearings focused quicker. And that it would help if the task force could give us questions or what the problems are with the complaint or what they are looking for from them, so that the people that are talking can focus in on the issues that are going to be determinative of whether their complaint is successful or not. And like when I was saying burden of proof in one of my things, is that the burden of proof is on the respondent to provide materials and for evidence. Like this person claims their evidence code, but then you asked her, well, where are these documents? Well, that could be handled beforehand. Like you could review the complaints and figure out what's missing. These documents should be here. If they're not there, then there's obviously a violation. And that's where the burden of proof comes in. Sometimes I hear questions and they're directed to the petitioner, and it's not the petitioner's burden of proof to figure out. And I could give examples of that. But if we could just, my main idea was to try and get these hearings focused a lot quicker to the exact issues at hand. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that may be all the public commenters, and certainly appreciated, especially on that item where I think that having the public be in the process is very helpful. Okay, so Cheryl, I think we can move to the next item.
Item number 10, adjournment. I have 9:03 p.m.
Hello?
David Pilpel?
Yes, I just called in. Did I miss item 8?
Yeah, we just closed it.
We just.
All right.
Yeah.
Cheryl, I'll catch up with you tomorrow. You can tell me what happened.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
All right. Thank you, Chair Schmidt, and anybody else. Have a nice evening.
Member Stein.
Okay, who moves to close?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right. I am going to stop the recording.
All right.
All right. I hope that was okay.